What if this is the best mashup ever?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Geeks Who Like Sports Mashup! As always, I am Ray Carsillo, joined by my best friend in the entire world, Lee Elias. Lee,
Yes.
we got a good one for the people today.
Great one.
What if we saw a little bit of Marvel's season 3 What if some sports moments changed in history?
Right. And this is right after we talked about you can't play the what if game to the Mets fans, but because Mets fans, it was such a horrific ending to your season, we're going to play what if in sports. So Ray and I have each picked a moment, what if moment in sports, and we're trying to keep it away from like obvious things like what if Bill Buckner wasn't Bill Buckner, like things like that, like big kind of like echo dramatic, like if this happened, it would reverberate for decades.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What if? So Lee, want to kick things off with us, Lee? With you have a hockey what if?
I have a hockey one, yeah, and actually I don't think it's too cliche, but I actually wonder about this one a lot. Okay, and it's follow me here, because this one grows. What if Eric Lindros stayed with the Quebec Nordiques and never went to the Philadelphia Flyers and or New York Rangers, depending how you look at that time? All right, because the Rangers were interested in it too. Let's just say he stayed in Quebec. The reason I bring this one up, Ray, is because what actually happened is obviously he signed with Philadelphia. Quebec had to move to Colorado. They got Patrick Waugh. They won the Stanley Cup as the Colorado Avalanche. The Flyers were very competitive for years, never won a cup, but were very competitive. Eric Lindros was a mainstay there for 6 or 7 years, right? The reason why this is such a big what if he goes to Quebec, a lot of things happen. Number one, Quebec never moves.
No.
They become a powerhouse. They have players like Joe Sakic. They have players like Eric Lindros. They don't get Patrick Waugh, most likely, right? But they're extremely competitive. The Flyers keep names like Forsberg, Ricci, Hextall, a lot of money. I mean, suddenly Quebec and the Flyers are the two best teams in the league.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, I guess you can make the argument that Colorado and Philly were two of the best teams in the league at that time, but it's really interesting what would have happened. I mean, the amount of money that would have stayed in Quebec, the entire landscape of the NHL would be different. It's like, would we even have a team in Colorado today if that had happened? And probably from an expansion. But it changes everything when you think about the amount of players involved in that trade. And then for the decades to come, what happens? How many Stanley Cups does Quebec win? How many Stanley Cups do the Flyers win?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really interesting situation there.
No, for sure. I mean, it's definitely a great what if. It's one of those trades that is still talked about today with good reason, because like you said, it changed the course of several franchises' histories. Yeah. Like in big ways.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, a lot of people always say that, oh, Colorado won that trade. And look, they did, but not as much as I think people say. I mean, the Cups are undeniable, but the Flyers were a horrendous team at that time, and Eric Lindros made them a powerhouse. I mean, one of the most powerful teams of the late 90s, really into the early 2000s. And again, obviously before the early 90s, they were super powerful as well. So, like, both teams won in their own right. Okay, I mean, I rather would have been on the Quebec, Colorado side of this any day of the week, but that's a huge one for me. I mean, it really, decades of hockey are different if that trade doesn't happen. You can't say that about everybody.
No, you can't. But, similarly, going to the NFL with my what if.
NFL with what if.
The trade that I always think of that changed the face of the NFL for literally a decade was the Herschel Walker trade.
Right.
When the Cowboys at 1-15, but obviously Herschel Walker, a generational talent, gets traded to the Vikings because they felt he was the piece they needed to try to win they could win a Super Bowl. And they trade away a whole bunch of draft picks that the Cowboys used to draft Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin.
That's a good point, man.
Like that gives Dallas the pieces to build their 90s dynasty where they win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years.
Their last dynasty, right?
Their last dynasty. And the Vikings don't go to the Super Bowl, don't have those draft picks, and kind of just continued to flounder, right? Like the Vikings had good teams. They were playoff teams, but like the Cowboys, again, similarly won 3 Super Bowls, right? They were one of the dominant teams of the early to mid 90s. And that trade, if Herschel Walker stays with Dallas, not to say that Dallas doesn't eventually turn it around, but what does Minnesota do with those draft picks? Could they put the pieces there to make a Super Bowl run, right?
Interesting.
There were teams involved. I think the Chargers obviously kicked in with that, I think, too. Ended up being, I think it was like 18 picks and a whole bunch of lots of pieces, but that was the highlights, right? The draft picks that Dallas got turned into Michael Irvin, Troy Aikman, and Emmitt Smith, but arguably the greatest running back of all time. Not in my opinion, but he had the best stats, but I will always pick Barry Sanders and Walter Payton. I will always put both of them ahead of Emmitt Smith in terms of just pure running back. That's me. It's an opinion. You can argue with Emmitt's stats. Statistically, greatest running back of all time.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean that's one of those what ifs. You just go
based on both of these what ifs. Great pick, by the way, Ray. The question has to be asked. In my memory, and you'll have a broader one than me. The only player I've ever seen sit out and like wait and like move to another team or decide to play for a certain team that has ever worked out is Eli Manning. I don't ever remember one of these gigantic trades really paying off the way the team that made the most players moved.
Yeah,
wanted it to, right? Like I remember Eli Manning sitting on. This dude won 2 Super Bowls. He did the right thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right?
You wanted to play in New York, wanted to be in New York, and did not want to go to the Chargers.
In the history of sports, can you think of any massive, earth-shattering, tectonic plate-moving trades that have worked out quite like this? And I mean like big. Like, again, I was going to say like Babe Ruth, that was not as big of a trade.
In the moment, no.
Yeah, it was like just a normal kind of trade. I mean, it was a dumb trade.
It was a dumb trade. The thing is, like the Yankees were the one who were like, babe, stop pitching. Stop pitching.
Yeah, like that was just a trade. I mean, Eric Lindros.
It was money. The thing is, it was money. Like they traded a player for literally to make the money to start a play.
Yeah,
and like look, Boston was still a competitive team when they got rid of Babe Ruth, but obviously that took the Yankees to a whole
other level. No, we don't.
Of course, you also
remember as a Red Sox. Okay, we don't. That's not how it works.
No, the same way you don't remember him as a Brave.
Yeah, I was just going to say that too. But I can't believe we got to this point that I do believe Eli Manning is the only player I've ever seen in a situation like that actually come out on top.
Yeah, there's got to be more. I think we just not thinking of them at the moment.
You know who we should ask?
The people?
The people. Because we want to know what
you think. So, yeah. Let us know. What ifs would you trade? Would you make in history? Not necessarily have to be a trade. And then let us know if there was ever a trade that really worked out in a way where like the Eli trade where like a player kind of held out and kind of like really kind of held him hostage.
That was controversial at the time. Nobody.
There was a big deal because again, he had never never played an NFL snap.
Nobody talks about that.
No.
Where was he supposed to go? The Chargers.
The Chargers.
Yeah.
Wow. And then
that would have changed their life.
Well, and that's a big what if too. What if Eli stayed with the Chargers, and what if the Giants, who then took Phillip? What if Phillip Rivers was a Giant?
The Chargers had some good players at that time too, right?
Yeah, look, Phillip Rivers took that. That was a good. The Chargers were a team that could never win the big game. They always got to the playoffs. Always got to the playoffs with Phillip Rivers.
Wow.
They made it to the playoffs as many times as he's had kids.
Did they have Jones-Drew at that time? He was
LaDainian. They got LaDainian. Jones-Drew was Jacksonville.
Yeah,
LaDainian Tomlinson was.
Wow, that could have been some damage.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is they had the pieces. They just could never. A lot of times it was because they always had a bad kicker. Missed a lot of field goals, and that happens. But yeah, again, we want to know what you guys think. Let us know what ifs would you do in sports history.
What up? Oh
no, Mashup.
Mashup. What up?
What up?
What up?
Now we're our truth. from WWE.
Yeah. Well, I like it. I got a smile from our producer, Savi. Anyway, we want to know what you think. We'll see you on the next Mashup.
Yes, and stay tuned for another full edition of Geeks Sports next week. We'll see you, everybody. Good night.